Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We now know we don't have to run Tankathon again because we know the results of the lottery. And Ack, I told you.
Yeah, you did. You were right, Mike.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Well, it takes a big man to admit that. That's good.
Yeah.
And I'm a big man, miss.
You are a big man.
Big man. And remember,
I'm a big man. I'm a big man, but it refers to my expanding waistline. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about. I did an article on Full Press MLB about how teams are allocating their money, and it's interesting because there's a lot of money being spent in baseball, and a lot of it's being spent on players outside of their prime, and that's really coming home to roost this year for a lot of teams. And the Mets are one of them. They have their top two starters. Max Scherzer's 38, Justin Verlander's 40, and Verlander had like a minor injury, but he missed a month and change. Pitched okay last week. Scherzer now has revealed that while his velocity is down, it's not the rosin that's causing problems. He has a nagging injury, and so now they don't know if he'll make that start tonight. So they had to fly David Peterson to Cincy, and Scherzer hasn't been very good. So that's $80 million there. And if you look across the league, you'll see a lot of the lower salaried teams, lower payroll teams are actually doing really well. And so it does make you wonder, and Mike's Yankees are suffering from this too. It does make you wonder at some point if teams are really going to start to look at this and say, all right, there's a point where we have to stop paying guys past their prime or giving them contracts that run through past their prime.
Well, based on the money that was sort of thrown around at Aaron Judge, broke the record, broke Maris's AL record, 62 home runs. San Francisco offered him just as much as the Yankees did. So that, he's 31 years old. There doesn't seem to be a shying away. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe I personally think that spending money on Judge, who's 31, is a different kettle of fish than spending money on a 38-year-old Scherzer and a 40-year-old Verlander, even though Verlander was great last year and won the Cy Young. I just think that, when it comes to players in their late 30s, it's going to be short term, because they break down. And I think that's the case in any sport and in the NHL as well. I mean, you've got these 35 and over contracts now where, if the player retires, there is no cap.
The NHL doesn't have this. Okay, so I have the list of players for deferred payments, and Bonilla's almost done, so we'll leave him alone. 60. We'll leave him alone. Ken Griffey Jr. is at the age of 53. There's still $3.5 million that has to be paid to him in deferred payments. He's 53 years old. Chris Davis, who is 37, still has $14.8 million worth of payments. John Lester, who's 39, has $3 million. Manny Ramirez is still getting $2 million more, and he's been getting money. He's been out of baseball for a very long time.
Yeah, but that money's going directly to Balco.
And there's 7 other players. Brett Saberhagen is still getting money from the Mets. And Brett Saberhagen is, let's see if I have his age here. He's 58.
Yeah.
So I don't think the NHL has that problem.
No, and that problem is not allowable in the CBA.
Right.
So yeah,
if it were allowable, I don't think it would be as bad as that.
No. But the whole thing here is, in Major League Baseball, that's allowable, and owners that run amok will do that. I mean, the Yankees have never had I don't think they've ever had deferred payments like that. But I don't know. I just think
the Yankees have so much money, they do just pay it off.
Right.
Like, I get it. Like, that's the only reason. But the Yankees have spent plenty of bad money, obviously.
No other team could walk away, and they might could walk away from a guy like Aaron Hicks, who's making $10 million a year. They could just designate him for assignment and walk away from him. I think the last guy I can remember that had a term on his contract. Remember Vernon Wells with the Blue? I think
Robinson Cano for the Mets.
Yeah, but that was a steroid thing. So
I know, but it's still a lot of money.
A lot of money. Anyway, let's talk the lottery, because I enjoyed the results.
And I enjoyed all the people texting me telling me that it was rigged. All right, here we go.
It's rigged.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023.
I'm Michael Lagello, and unlike the Anaheim Ducks, I do not enjoy finishing second.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I once never picked up a second place trophy from losing the Little League World Series. And for 3 years, I was getting phone calls, don't you want it? And I didn't want it. So I agree with Mike. Yeah.
I'm Michael, you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday. I once played for a team that went 0-23 in Little League Baseball. I was a leading hitter. I led the league. I led the league in home runs. Actually, I was a catcher. And our team was terrible. And our team sponsor was Garden State Beauty Supplies, which
wasn't Chico's
powder blue uniforms. Which as a kid in the 80s, but as a kid in the 80s, powder blue wasn't exactly as hip as it is now. And
the Phillies had the powder blues, and they were popular. Look, my phone.
Yeah, this is more. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, it was Garden State Beauty Supply. We didn't do very well.
The sponsor wasn't Red Wigglers, the Cadillac of Worms?
No, we had a lot of Perkins pancakes. Remember these places that were like
Ponzio's. Could have been Ponzio's.
like in the South Jersey thing.
Yeah, Ponzio's is still around. Could have been
Ponzio's still around? Yeah, it is still around. Olga's is gone though.
Olga's is gone. They could have been another one.
They were the two diners that were like competing with each other.
Yeah,
around the corner. Olga, the girl Olga, who was named after the daughter, but was in my class in high school, so I know Olga. Anyway, here we go. Does it make any sense to anybody out there?
It makes sense to me. I used to see it. What is it?
Yeah, anybody in South Jersey, Philadelphia,
70, at the end of 70, wherever that was.
Yeah. Back when the racetrack existed.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. Let's talk about hockey. But let's first talk about the lottery, because the lottery, ping pong balls flying every which direction. Montreal was screwed.
The Montreal screw job.
They were screwed. The fun moment when we told everybody that Columbus had fallen back, even though we hadn't yet seen it from Bill Daly. That was fun.
Well, okay, that happened.
You guys see that? You guys caught that?
Yes.
That could have been the most boring lottery because everything was chalk. Everything was.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. We all tuned in.
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there was no drama because honestly, the thing was, and I said this before it went, with the rules that they changed, if all of a sudden the first 4 or 5 picks had not gone in order, then you knew that Anaheim was going to win the lottery, because if one of those teams had moved up, Anaheim was immediately going to move to number 1. So there was no drama there, and then everybody after that, it just kept falling into place, boom, 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 until it got to the top 3.
Yeah, just think about how much more fun this is than watching, the nightly lotto guy, who, again, essentially this is the same show as the nightly lotto thing. They do the numbers.
You usually get a girl, though. You usually get a girl on that one.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, wait, you'd rather have Bill Daly than Yolanda Vega?
I would. Here's why I'd rather have Bill Daly, because of the Anaheim Ducks moment. That was my entertainment. That was great. Look,
when he put the Ducks backwards?
Yes, the Ducks backwards was great, but not to be outdone by the quick reveal or the too fast reveal of
going to commercial
pick before the commercial break. That was a mistake. And
that was hilarious. I mean,
but all these things happen because it's live TV. And I guarantee you this was a massive ratings grabber. I was just on Sirius, and I know it started before 2005. I think it started like 97 or something. I don't know, one of those years. But in 2005, everybody cared because of Crosby. Now everybody cares, period, because there's so many good prospects that we all just tune in.
Well, okay. Let me just offer my TV critique. And I said this before the draft lottery, because I remember in 2016 the painful experience of watching, and I can't remember if it was it was somebody from Sportsnet, Darren Millard, who was co-hosting, and he was interviewing Patrick Laine, who was in a bunk bed with his hair all mussed up in Finland. And it was like what? It was like 2:00 in the morning there. Okay. Connor Bedard, all he wants to do is be selected or know where he's going to go.
Right.
Kevin Weeks is a good commentator. I like Kevin a lot, but he's not an interviewer. And this, I mean, everybody just wanted to get to the damn lottery. To get rid of the interview.
Like, come on, like this is
get rid of the interview and just get to the goddamn lottery.
Everybody just wants to get to the part where Mike starts screaming about Campbell not being good too, but we got to build this up. Right. We got to do it's a slow build today. We're going to get there, but it's
everyday
experience. This is a show. I've been, we're running a show here.
It's painful. Just
now look like Chris from Long Island. This number's been updated. The Blackhawks have sold $2.5 million worth of season tickets for next year based on Connor Bedard. This is why, regardless of what you think about the Blackhawks, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but this is why, as far as the league is concerned, Bedard going to the Blackhawks is a big deal because it's an original six market that wasn't selling any tickets.
Yeah, I mean, we immediately heard two things. Of course, the conspiracy theorists will be, it was fixed. And second of all, that the Blackhawks don't deserve Connor Bedard because A, they tanked, and B, their organization was rife with scandal. Okay, I mean, I don't think, obviously they did not handle the whole Kyle Beach situation well, and a lot of people paid for that with their jobs. But the league needs Chicago to be a successful franchise. It's imperative that they're a successful franchise.
No, it's good when they're it's not imperative, but it is good.
It's good. But I will say this: look, Anaheim and Chicago tanked, and they tanked well. Columbus didn't tank. That's what
I kind of was hoping for Columbus because I felt like that. I've always felt bad. Columbus always looks sad.
Just fell apart. Yeah.
No, you were rooting for, and I picked Columbus, but you were rooting for Columbus because they didn't tank and they would be rewarded. I am all in favor of teams purposely tanking, and this will continue. This will continue the practice because Chicago got paid off for tanking.
But you're not let's set the record straight here, Mike. You're not all in favor of teams tanking.
Yes, I am.
You think that that's the right thing to do based on the system.
Yes.
But the actual concept of teams tanking and giving up and not trying as hard, which doesn't really happen, but whatever.
My motto
that you're in favor of.
My motto
the system needs to be fixed.
My motto is if you're gonna suck the worst.
I would say this much.
Mike, even though we all know that's your motto. Go ahead, Russ, you continue.
No, the only thing I was going to say, Ek, is as far as Flyers fans, right? Because they ended up 7 where they pretty much were. And I thought it would be 7 or 9. That's what I had tweeted out beforehand.
Okay.
It could have been better than that. And it's simply because they won too many games. And there was no question that Tortorella just flew in the face of this. And the team decided, we're not going to worry about it. It'll be up to the hockey gods, whatever. Well, now you're picking 7th, which is okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're getting a franchise player. I don't. And the point is, they could have maybe picked around 4th. And that's really right. Was those extra wins at the end of the season worth more than the 3 slots in the lottery? I say no.
We'll never know.
You have a coach that says otherwise. So that's the part where there's a yin and a yang to this. And it's not like the Flyers should have gone out there and produced bad results. It's just that they would have put younger players in there sooner. They would have racked up some losses early on. Those guys still would have gotten good coaching. They still would have gotten experience, but you were catering to a coach there. And long term, you could have had a better pick.
I mean, if they had someone out on passes on Brave Carter Hart's legs, that would have worked too. I mean, that's another.
That's different. Come on.
Because he's the one. If you really wanted to tank, get rid of Carter Hart because he's the reason that they didn't tank.
Right, but they didn't do that, and they didn't have to do that. Really,
they could have hired Jeff Galooly, but okay.
Right, I mean that in jest, obviously, but I'm just saying that. I mean, it was goalies. A good goalie is hard to tank with a good goalie.
They didn't have they weren't set in the backup spot, so that's where they were they were going to lose some games anyhow.
Yeah,
but again. That's fine. I mean, like Michael Cohen says, Flyers love the no man's land method. And, I hate to agree with Michael Cohen because he's usually way out there. But as far as this goes, right now, their whole strategy is this, Ek. No man's land.
They're not the only team that does that.
They say they're rebuilding, but they haven't shown fans or anybody any kind of tool that you do to rebuild yet. They haven't. To me, a rebuild is 5 years. You don't rebuild in 2 or 3 years. That's not a true rebuild. It usually takes about 5 years. Like when Steve Yzerman said, hey, this might be 5 years. Be prepared. The Flyers aren't willing to say that. So to me, they're not willing to do a 5-year window.
No.
And so that's the kind of mixed messaging that I feel like Flyers are at, and other teams too. It's not just them.
Now
they're not the only team that does that, obviously.
The interesting thing about Chicago winning now, besides the fact that they sold a bunch of tickets, is the chatter today that, wow, will they bring Patrick Kane back?
Yes.
Will Jonathan Taves come back? Provide some support structure to the young player, so it's not all on him. And I'm wondering, okay, like, I know that Kane said, like, on the way out the door, he says that the Hawks were not interested in him anymore. I mean, do we think that all of a sudden that's going to change the mentality of the organization? I don't think so. I mean, I think they'll bring in veterans, but I don't know if they'll bring Kane back.
I talked to people about that today, and I really do. I really think this does change mentality. And I think, well, it's basically, it was a two-way street on burning those bridges. Like, Kane also wanted to go to the Rangers and was going to sign with the Rangers next year and was not going to sign with, anyway, that is something that, but now if the Rangers aren't an option for Kane, which it might not be very clearly, what other option is there for Kane? Going to Buffalo? No,
I do not think that he would want to go to Buffalo or that Buffalo would want him.
But the perfect option really is to go back to Chicago and groom this kid, and play with this kid. I think that's a perfect option.
I don't see. I disagree. I think right now, when you cut ties with a guy like that, you should keep those ties cut. Not because he's a bad guy or bad for the organization or couldn't do some of what you said, but there's no point in a rebuilding team going back and bringing in someone who's 35 years old, going to be coming off a hip surgery, going to be now having to try and keep up with one of the fastest players in the league. Like, why in the world would you do that? It doesn't make sense to me. What does make sense, though, for people that were saying, well, why would Seth Jones want to stay there? Well, now you know why Seth Jones would want to stay there, because his fortunes have changed for him. So,
and they have a lot of cap space, and this is going to make them very interesting in the UFA market.
So you bring in like a 27 or 30-year-old. You don't bring in a 34 or 35-year-old. You bring in somebody who can actually work with Bedard the next few years and not have to be worried about, hey, can Kane even play this next game? Or is Kane going to teach Bedard not how to play defense? Like, you need somebody else. I just think this is a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any chance in the world that Taves returns. No, I don't think that's.
No, I don't think he's returning.
I think Taves is going to go to Winnipeg. I think that's done.
I think he's retiring.
No, I think he's retiring or playing for Winnipeg. I think that there's some people up there that are trying to convince him to play up there. So it's possible that they get him to go up there. But as far as or retiring. But as far as Kane goes, I think it's possible. I mean, at least people I talked to today, I talked to somebody who's very close to Kane today, and he said it's possible. So this changes everything.
I'm going to tell you it's possible.
He said this changes everything, really, is what he said. So that's.
I'll say this. I mean, we don't know how extensive, because we know that Kane's going to have surgery. Right. It's just a question of how extensive it is, if it's labrum or if it's a knee. I mean, I don't know. We haven't heard specifically what it is. If it's a labrum and it's a hip thing, that he's out 6 months at least. So
right. And then nobody's going to touch him until he comes back.
Right, exactly. Right. So
he shows he's healthy and everything like that. Which might be a good move too. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Now, just quickly on this before we move on to the games. So, Anaheim, I mean, I have a friend in my timeline who's a Ducks fan, and he's like, I don't want to hear about this. F you, everybody. I'm like, okay, Fantilli's not a bad plan, not a bad consolation prize when it comes to the lottery. Russ. I think they're pretty happy that they're going to, I'm sure they want Bedard, but Fantilli's going to be a pretty damn good player.
He is. No, he is going to be a pretty damn good player. But just as an example, going back to Chicago just for 1 second. So, I'm looking at the free agent list. And so somebody you could bring in, Jason Zucker at 31, that's fine. He scores goals. Right. You can bring in somebody like that and let them be on his line. Connor Brown, I would let him play with Connor Brown. Yeah. Even a guy like Kerfoot, that's a good choice. You don't need someone like Patrick Kane. You just need a good veteran. But anyhow, getting with Fantilli, Fantilli's tremendous. I mean, what I think this could happen for Anaheim is Anaheim has not historically had a lot of players that have starred in college hockey. And they don't get free agents. Like we talked about that. College hockey free agents generally don't sign there. So now you all of a sudden get Fantilli. The end of next year, when there are some of those guys, there could be guys with rights. There could be guys with rights that have never signed yet that might decide they want to go to Anaheim, really good players. Or there could be a couple free agents now that say, hey, I now want to play in Anaheim with Fantilli because they played against him in college hockey or they know how good he is. And I think he will draw more players to them that they've not been able to get the last few years. And I think that's going to help him as much as the player himself.
And they're not as far away as they seem. Like, it's because they do have some young players who are on the verge.
They need a lot of defense. They need
a lot of defense, but they do have way more players in place than Chicago has in place, for example.
Yes.
And they're way more.
Chicago's got guys coming. They have Krasinski coming.
Yeah.
Nazar looked great from Michigan. He's a couple years away.
Mastro.
Yeah, they have 3 or 4 that are really good coming. Plus, they have Seth Jones there. Plus,
you got to look at Zegras and Tavish. These are seriously players.
No, I give you that. I grant you that Anaheim is a better system right now of young players. They do.
And,
really do.
And you know what? And I think it was Jeff Merrick who mentioned this. The people that are probably the most happy after the lottery were every Eastern Conference general manager because
I thought that
Anaheim and Chicago got the top 2 picks. So you're going to have Fantilli and Bedard in the Western Conference for the next 7 or 8 years, and barring them being traded. And these are 2 really great young players, and they're not going to be in the East.
Yeah, it felt like if they end up in Columbus, man. I mean, like if Bedard ends up in Columbus, then you have that Metro division is just stacked.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable.
Stacked young players.
Here's some things I wanted to mention player-wise from this draft as far as the lottery. So, first thing is like people are like, well, who would you pick, Russ? And I'm for the Flyers. And it's like at the 7th spot, there's like 7 different players I could tell you that would help them.
Yeah.
And honestly, what happens like at the 5th spot is going to impact them.
Right.
Based on who is all of a sudden going to fall to them. And so they're going to have to be ready for a bunch of different things. It's not going to be, they can't just go in there looking for one player. They've got to go in there looking for 3 players because of based on how the board might go. So just as the Flyers stand, that's one thing. So there is no easy answer to say the one player. I heard a loose, I'm not going to say who said it, but I heard this loose thing where there's a bunch of franchise players in this draft. And, this was said on television. Yes, a franchise player is like Jack Hughes. That's a franchise player. Claude Giroux is a franchise player.
Yeah.
I think there's 4 of them in this draft. That's what I think. And that's including Bedard, who I think is generational. But I'm not going any further than that. So, again, if you're picking 13th, I don't think your team's getting a franchise player. I'm sorry. That's just –
Was it safe to say, Russ, that, you think there's 4, but when you look back on this 10 years from now, there'll probably be 6?
Yeah. I think there's a possibility of that, yes.
And that's usually what the case is, right? Like, usually there's something like that.
Yes, there's always a couple of guys that have surprised you or gone beyond. But sometimes it could be 5 because one of the ones you thought – had bad injuries and things happened and he just didn't make it too. So
that's true. Yeah.
So I think it's possible you could have 5 or 6, but it's not like they're going to be 10 of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Even the best of drafts, you're not going to find 10 of them. You go back to 2003, you're not going to be able to find 10 of them. And and I've never looked at it. I've never even tried to count it up from 2003, but I'm just saying.
That would be interesting to do sometime. Yeah. I agree. That is an interesting, and how we're defining these guys. Like I like the definition you're putting in there, like between franchise and generational, because that is something that is not really being well defined right now. We need that.
No, it's not well defined, and I think sometimes GMs kind of use this as a crutch with the fan base, and they'll say we believe he's this, and that's fine. You can believe that, and that's just the same way I believe it. But odds are, when you start going back looking at drafts, how many generational guys are coming out? How many? And again, the generational ones are easy. There's like 4, right?
Right.
Maybe 3 or 4. I'm going to count Bedard. I still count Quinn Hughes because I do think he's doing great things as a defenseman that a lot of people haven't done. But he may not be. I get it. I could be wrong on that one. Crosby, McDavid. Like, that's it. Like, it's a short list. Jack Hughes is just the next guys. Austin Matthews, just the next guys. They're franchise guys.
McKinnon's just beyond that too.
Yeah, those are the guys you get, and you say, okay, we're building the franchise around those guys. But
I always try to define superstar versus star that way too.
Right, yeah, superstar is just thrown around way too much.
Way too much, I know.
Way too much because as an example, nobody said at the beginning Steve Yzerman was a superstar. Why? Because he had to work his way up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's still good to say whether or not it just depends where you put the line. Like he's like you always have the Yzerman, Dale Howard checks.
Well, no, I was going to say for the first 5 or 6 years, well, maybe even 7 or 8 years of their careers, Pat LaFontaine was considered better than Yzerman, and they were drafted right after each other.
Right.
And then the injuries to LaFontaine hurt his career, and Yzerman, was almost traded to Ottawa, and then matured and learned what needed to be done to win. And now I think he's looked upon as a much better player than LaFontaine's great, but Yzerman's looked at as in the higher level.
Yeah, is Lindros a superstar or a star? Those are the things I always wonder. There's the questions like.
Now, Lindros was thought to be a superstar and could have been a superstar if it wasn't for injury. There's no question.
I think he was, and then the injury really.
Right. It was just a franchise guy. There's no question about that.
Well, yeah, he definitely. He was generational for sure.
He could have been generational, but I think it was fair to tag him as generational based on what you did see in juniors and what you actually did see the first 3-4 years of his career. So I do think it was fair to tab him as generational. I do.
We should do this as a blog in the summer, as a couple podcasts in the summer, because I think that the defining is generational equal to superstar and franchise equal to star.
To me, generational is the highest. That is the highest you can go.
Right. Generational is beyond superstar.
To me, generational is like I brought up Quinn Hughes. So using as an example, I think I brought up maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. He had 70. And the only guys that come close to Quinn Hughes in lifetime assists for his first 4 or 5 years, the names are like Bobby Orr, Brian Leach, those kinds of names. When those kinds of comparisons are coming up in the numbers you're putting up, then you're close to generational or generational.
Yeah, Cal McCarr and Quinn Hughes. That's the other one.
Cal McCarr is right there too.
Right.
Yeah. So this is it is a really interesting. Matthews is a star, not a superstar yet. It's hard to say. These are things that
Matthews is a superstar. He's just not generational is Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid.
Right.
Okay.
But Matthews is great, but he's just a step.
Generational superstar.
Generational superstar star.
Our franchise player. Where's
franchise could be superstar. I think they're right on the same.
Yeah. The same kind of thing. Okay. All right.
Now, I know some people might argue, hey, Claude Giroux was franchise. Was he a superstar? You may not have called him one, but his numbers as far as who he was in company with, as far as all the years that he was scoring, put him in that class.
And he just scored 100 points as an older player too, so it's he's continuing on that path too. So that's
so he pretty much was a superstar.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call him a superstar though. It's funny. That's one of those things. Your head also. I've had this debate with Kevin before. Kevin's you just know if a guy's a superstar or a star.
I think like Marc-Andre Fleury was a superstar.
Temporarily, but not his whole career.
You knew in juniors he was a star then. Although he had that muff in the World Juniors, which could have set him back, and it didn't. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history for him. Now, Matt Murray may have won more cups, but he's not a superstar.
That's just generation.
This is just in general. Even when he was really, really good, he was a star, but he wasn't a superstar. Jonathan Quick was a superstar. He definitely was.
Yeah.
Now he's not even playing. Now he just got noticed on the bench.
Let's transition to that for a second, because we've reached a point of ridiculousness.
We have.
We're on their fourth goalie in Vegas, and still they're talking about Quick. This is Aiden Hill's net. I don't understand this at all. I know Quick didn't play incredibly well, but I saw him play pretty well in some games, and he's the kind of goalie that if you've watched him at all, he's not a regular season goalie.
Just think of it this way, he'll get his chance eventually, because the goalies are dropping like flies.
I'm starting to wonder if he will.
No, I'm saying the way goalies are dropping like flies, sure.
Yeah, only if Aiden Hill gets hurt, because
is he going to be the backup for Aiden Hill? Do we even know this? This is the question. I don't know. We don't know anything.
Okay. The preliminary indications are Brossoit is probably done for the season, because he couldn't even put weight on.
Which is really a shame, because the kid didn't deserve to be.
You never want to see anybody get hurt, and I said yesterday that I didn't think they could win with Brossoit and net. And I was anxious to see them change, but I didn't want to see the guy hurt, obviously. But Hill played fantastic in relief. And he's going to get the net, and if he continues to play that way, then but it's nice to have a future Hall of Famer as a fallback, and that's really what they have.
And they are kind of using him as the just in case. But I'll tell you what this reminds me of, and I kind of wish Twitter was around back then. So in 1986, when the Mets faced the Red Sox in the World Series, Tom Seaver was on the Red Sox, but he hurt his knee. He had to get knee surgery and couldn't make it back. But Tom Seaver was actually in the dugout for the Red Sox playing against the Mets. This is kind of like when Jonathan Quick disappeared and it took Elliot Friedman to tweet to let us know that he was still alive and he actually was going to be in uniform. You know that there's something weird going on.
So he was in uniform last night, right? Like he
was the E-bug.
Well, no, he was on the bench as the backup.
No, I know, but he was
once Landeskog got hurt.
Yeah. Originally he was the E-bug, and then along to NHL rules in the playoffs, the E-bug can dress and be on the bench after the goaltender hurt.
Does he care all about this team? Like at this point, is he like just completely?
He's disjointed from the team. I really don't think he wants to even be the backup, and I think the reason he wasn't dressed was because he didn't want to be dressed. I think he either wants to start or doesn't want to play. That's just been my feeling.
I think that you're probably dead on about that, and I don't know why. I mean, I guess we'll see because Aiden Hill's like okay goalie. I mean, and he has potential to be a better than okay goalie at times, but like
the only thing I can think of here is that Edmonton played Quick and in LA last year, and that they have the book on him, and if that's the case.
Or you can sit there and say LA stretched Edmonton to 7 games because of Quick.
I know. I said that, and I believe that, but that might be the reasoning of Bruce Cassidy. I mean, it's sort of puzzling.
It is the most bizarre circumstance of the entire playoffs, though. It is.
It's like it.
And really, nobody's talked about it in the sense that you would think it would be a story and be written about. And who's
covering this team, Russ? Like, how can this not be like something that someone out there is pounding on? Like, if this was in another market,
I know. It only got talked about yesterday because Friedman finally said, "Oh, look, there he is on the bench." But like before that, like for days, we were wondering. I kept searching Twitter. Is he practicing? Is he in uniform?
Yeah.
Is he hurt? And the answer was, he just probably didn't feel like doing any of that. But they couldn't get rid of him because they still need a goalie around.
I mean, does he bring that bad of an attitude to the locker room that they're worried about him? Like, it's like,
I don't.
It can't be great, or otherwise he'd have been.
Yeah, but I don't think he's that. It can't be that bad. I mean, come on, like he's still a professional. I mean,
is it a situation where if they looked at him and said, "Can you come into this game last night?" that he just would have looked at them like, "I don't feel like it." And I do think it's possible. Don't say no because
no, because remember, he's not getting paid anymore.
Right.
The players don't get paid in the playoffs.
I just kind of look at it and it's like, I could imagine that if the coach was thinking about it and he kind of looked over, he just said, "You know what, just put Hill in because there's no way Quick's going in." Like now, I think the coach already knows this.
Now, can we talk about the game itself and not who was the backup?
Because there wasn't much of a game.
No, it wasn't much of a game, and I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. And I said this to Russ this morning. Evander Kane is going to cost the Edmonton Oilers a game, with his absolute brain dead stupidity. Because now he didn't get suspended or fined for what he did in game 2 with sucker punching Kolasar repeatedly, and the referee was standing there writing down. But yesterday, at the end of the first period, for no good reason, he bolts at Alex Pietrangelo and high sticks him across the jaw and gets a minor penalty. He's honestly, I would not want that guy on my team. He's a moron. He does not have any kind of impulse control. Yeah. He's a phenomenal talent if he would just stick to playing and not this stupidity that he continues.
I'm really surprised because
I took like 7 strides to do it.
Oh my God, it was ridiculous.
I know, and it really should have been ejected. Felt like when he first got there, that McDavid got to him and said, "Let's just play hockey."
Because that really for a little while.
And McDavid was a huge proponent of bringing him back. Like McDavid pushed super hard. Like if we're not for McDavid, there's no way he's still on the team. So it's like the reality is that. And I thought, okay, well, McDavid definitely had gotten to him, and he's going to just, but now he's got, obviously frustrated. I mean, there's obviously people are trying to get under his skin too, and he doesn't have the patience.
Sure, but he took 7 strides. Like he should be not playing next game.
No question about it, and I agree with that.
But there has
the refs wrote it down, right?
And normally if there was some sort of review. Normally, if there was some sort of review by the league, we would hear about it already, and there wasn't. So they're apparently just going to let this go. And it's like, okay, you know what? I mean, honestly, if I was Edmonton, I would almost want them to have some sort of review just to sort of cool his jets. He's going to do something. Mark my words. If it's not this series, if they don't get eliminated, which I think they're going to, because I think Vegas is the better team. Or going forward in a conference final or a Stanley Cup final, he is going to do something that costs his team, and they have only themselves to blame because he's just dumb. He's a dumb player.
Well,
the weird thing is the entire internet saw the play.
Yeah,
refs didn't.
Yeah, that is pretty astonishing. And I mean, and even
how did you miss it?
Even if you miss it, refs have missed things that have still been reviewed.
Right.
Like, and it's bizarre to me that it's not even like getting reviewed. Like that I don't understand at all. And I don't, especially given, and I'm also kind of, you're kind of a little disappointed in Cassidy here for not making a big deal of it too, because honestly,
that's a good point.
The game that has to be played here is very much about power plays in this series. Like, and you want, you don't want to give Edmonton power plays, and you definitely want, you to get power plays. So it's like, why, he's got to make a little point to make it a little bit harder for Edmonton to get power plays. If nothing else, he should be complaining about this. I think he's not the kind of guy who can't complain. And Cassidy, of course, was the oft controversial Cassidy, which also makes you wonder, like, more about the Jonathan Quick thing. Like that is anyway. There's a lot of sides to this Quick story, and maybe somebody will ask him a question someday, and we'll find out.
No, nobody's asking him a question.
Nobody's asking anybody a question about this.
I'm going to say this though, for those people that were playing. For those people that were taking the long play on Jack Eichel being better than Connor McDavid at any given moment, it took 6 years, but it's happened. He's finally better in that game, and maybe the last few. Jack Eichel has really emerged, and this is a good sign for Vegas, but a great sign for him as far as his health too.
No, it's great for him, and it's great for USA Hockey. It's great for a lot of things. I mean, it's like Jack Eichel. He's not better than McDavid.
No.
But he has a potential in a game basis to be better than McDavid, and that's what he showed.
But when I picked Vegas in this series, what played out last night was the reason I picked them, because not only are they, in terms of experience, a deeper team. I think that their defense is much better than Edmonton's. I think Vegas undressed Edmonton's defense at times. Guys like Ceci and Broberg.
They flat gave up once.
But Edmonton did the same thing to Vegas the game before. So
what
Lane gave up in this game? They did.
But my point is, and I think it's been borne out here from the first 3 games of the series. Vegas was able to beat Edmonton when Draisaitl and McDavid were super in game 1. In game 2, they did it again, and Vegas had no answer. Last night, they were mortal. And they kicked Edmonton's ass. You need McDavid and Draisaitl to stand on their head, which they're going to do on most nights, but to cover up the imperfections of the Edmonton Oilers. Now they're a better team than they've been over the last few years. They've added Yamamoto and depth players like McLeod and Hyman and all these other guys.
Nugent Hopkins is a 100-point player.
And Nugent Hopkins is a great player. But I'm just saying, I think
Vegas is a great player too.
I think Vegas is a deeper team with more experience, with a better defense. I think the goaltending is basically even. I mean, Skinner was bad on a couple goals, and then made a great save before they exposed him on the one goal, and then pulled Campbell, and then Campbell didn't have an answer either. When Edmonton plays,
Woodcroft was right to rip his team after he waited for the question. He took his shot.
Yeah, no, he was. And listen, and Skinner was what Skinner's been, and the reality is, like, and you guys know we're never going to get into this again, but the reality is, like, he has absolutely he's made some great saves. There have been times when he's made some really spectacular saves, but he's also given up some goals that you cannot give up in the playoffs.
The Zach Whitecloud short side goal cannot be allowed.
Yeah, actually, 3 of the goals he gave up last night cannot be allowed. And in other games, it's always at least.
Yeah, he's a developing goalie. I still would have Campbell in there.
Yeah, I mean, and Campbell came in and we gave up 1 goal, but he still was like, or he gave up 2 goals.
But 1 was waved off.
Well, was waved off because he was pushed.
No. And I had this debate.
That's ridiculous, Mike. If you're going to say that goal should have counted, that's absurd.
I had this debate with. Okay, they waved it as they said it was goalie interference. And I can't remember who it was. Was it Martinez that was?
Yes,
Martinez, who took his stick and put it under his arm and pulled Campbell to the side.
Oh, will you please? He comes down.
Happened.
He comes down the boards. He cuts in front of the net. The opportunity. Campbell, when he makes the save, gets into the line of where Martinez is going, and they collide.
No, he didn't get in the line.
Jeez.
That's why I draw the line.
He was in his crease. He was on his goal line.
He was cutting across.
Stays into the line where Martinez is going. How can you possibly
That is the one little line that you're not supposed to cross, Mike. You know that goal line.
The crease is a line that Martinez is not allowed, and Martinez is not allowed to take a stick and pull him to the side, which is what happens. You don't see that from. There's one angle like when I first saw it, I'm like, well, it's a little bit iffy maybe, but there's one angle they showed that was like, wow, he actually took his stick and pulled him to the side. And it's like, you can't blame that on Campbell. God.
No, but I would say this. I would start Campbell because
absolutely.
I don't think well, I'm going to tell you why, Mike. It has nothing to do with his goaltending ability. It has everything to do with his leadership.
Yeah.
Because I think right now, Edmonton needs something to believe in because they're sagging to the point where they just gave up last night.
You don't start a player because he's a nice guy. And Jack Campbell is
a nice guy. No, you're saying that.
Yeah, but Jack Campbell,
he's a leader.
Again,
Mike. You understand leader?
Okay. Better goaltender, Stuart Skinner.
No.
Yes.
No. Just simply no. I mean, statistically, no.
What do you mean statistically no?
Guys, no. I mean,
what do you mean statistically no?
This season, during the season, he was a better goalie, yes. But playoff-wise, Campbell's numbers are way better. Not even close.
He's played
in 2 series, and Sinner's played in 1, and Campbell's has played
two half games. That's what he's played.
No, not just this round.
I mean, half game that they had to come back against LA, and this game, that's it. He's played.
But last season, his numbers are better than Skinner's numbers were this season, and they're way better than Samsonov's numbers are this season, by the way. And it's like completely. I mean, there's no Campbell's, and also you go back to World Juniors. Campbell's pressure situations.
About World Juniors.
Even Team USA and like World Cups or whatever. He has been a good goalie in pressure situations his whole freaking career, and he's a great leader. Exactly, and there's no point. And listen, Skinner is probably going to be the starter for the next 5 to 10 years, and I mean, I'm totally fine with that. But right now, where you are,
Campbell's against, even in this series, even though it's parts of 2 games, is 1.53. With the Leafs, his first year, it was 1.81. Then with the Leafs last year, it was 3.15. He still had 3 wins in both those Leafs series. Those wins count, Mike. Just so you know.
They do. They count. And the save percentage.
How about the
save percentage is really way better too. And it's like
not the better.
The reality is like when you're playing behind a team like Toronto last year or Edmonton this year, your goals against average is not going to be under 2. That's just the reality. These teams aren't defensive.
I think they're going to go back to Skinner. And I think they will go back to Skinner.
They might, and it will be a huge mistake. And I think he'll be eliminated because of it.
I think he's just a young guy. I think give him a breather. You saw what New Jersey did. I think they need to do a similar thing.
Yeah, they need to do a similar thing. Skinner's played a lot of hockey. He's getting a lot of shots in a short period of time. He's under a lot of pressure, and it's like the reality is. I mean, this is just. I just don't understand it. I mean, again, yes, obviously Campbell's not the reason the Leafs lost last year. Samson's not the reason the Leafs are losing this year. Right. But the reality is he has bet. Campbell's
is the reason the Leafs lost in the past.
Yeah, right. I don't know. The whole thing is
I get it.
It's a dumb term. It's a dumb situation. And honestly, it's like there is no logic.
I feel like this is a Beavis and Butthead conversation. I really do.
I guess.
Are you threatening me?
There is no logic to anything you're saying, Mike. Here.
I am going to
all emotion, and it's all emotion, and it's absolutely frustrating now. Anyway, here we go.
From an intellectual standpoint, it hurts.
It does. It pains me to have this discussion over and over again.
Yeah, because you're wrong and I'm right.
No, because you're simply.
Now, he could give you the numbers and you don't even care.
Give me the numbers. I give you that. What the team. I mean, you're not even looking at how the team plays. Like Russ, at least it's like saying, yeah, the team in front of Campbell, they looked better in the LA series. Last night, they just weren't.
It was for 2 periods.
It didn't matter.
It doesn't matter, Mike.
Yeah, yes, it does. They looked pretty good in front of Skinner in 3 other victories.
No, they didn't. Not always. In some of the games, they did, but not always.
Let's move on. Some really bad news for and the Gabriel Landeskog front because I mean he's a great player. I'm very happy that he won a Stanley Cup before this injury because, Russ, this is it's not experimental, but it's not the chances of him being as good as he was prior to this, and he's having cartilage replacement surgery.
Right, because he probably has no cartilage in his knees. And I know what happens when you have no cartilage in your knees. And usually the next step is knee replacement. No one can play in the NHL with knee replacement.
Right.
So he's going to take the arduous journey and try and, grow it. And that could take, up to 2 years. Nobody really knows because, it's probably like stem cell replacement and all that stuff. And we'll see. This is career threatening for sure. It's a long shot if he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Now we understand why they were waiting.
Yeah.
This year because
sucks.
It's awful, and this guy has given it his all. I feel good that that he was highly paid. I feel like the Avs did give him what he's worth. I covered the cup with him in it.
Yeah,
I feel like he was a massive reason that they won. You could see that there was a difference with the team when he wasn't there, when he was there regularly. So
he had a solid career.
They're going to have to name a new captain though. You can't just because the thing is.
It'll be McKinnon.
Yeah, they got to switch to McKinnon now. I think if you kind of leave it as Landeskog even through next year, I don't think it's a good idea.
No, and one of the viewpoints that was expressed about this, Shayna Goldman was on Jeff Merrick's show, and she was talking about the fact that they were waiting all year for him to come back, and they didn't make moves at the deadline because they expected him to come back. Now, the only thing good about this is there's certainty. He's not going to be playing at all next year. So you have to go and you can put him on LTIR, and that clears, I think, $7 million in cap space. You can go out and either sign somebody short term. Maybe that's where Patrick Kane goes.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can only go 10% over on the summer cap. That $7 million doesn't take effect until regular season. So you almost have to wait till the deadline to really take, to get that full benefit.
Yeah.
So
you can't be crazy on July 1st like you'd like to be.
It's not going to help him It's not going to help him as much in the off season. It'll help him a little bit, but again, you can't replace that player either. Right. Yeah, I saw the Mathot thing, but again, the only thing what we could say is Mathot had it done many years ago, and as we know, things change.
Yeah, perhaps the procedure's gotten more effective.
Procedure may be better.
Recovery might be easier.
We'll hope for him, but yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yeah, that really is a tough thing.
I've also been investigating since yesterday's, talk of Ranger coaches, and I just think the name Messier is out there. I don't really think it's serious. I don't.
I'd like to think that, but there's just some people I've talked to that are too connected that freak me out about it. Like,
I can see why people are saying it and why you heard it, but I don't think it's serious.
I wouldn't do it. There's no way I would do it.
I did want to talk about Chris Knobloch because Chris Knobloch, we saw him here in Philly. He was here for a couple of years as an assistant, and I think he was the coach of the Erie Otters. I had interviewed Knobloch before as a head coach. I think he's really good. I know he had that good 6-game stint when Quinn was out with COVID. 6 games, folks. I do think Knobloch is doing a really good job with Hartford, but it's a big jump behind the Ranger bench from Hartford. It really is. Like, this is not like every other team. There really is a different kind of spotlight that goes on the coach in New York.
It really is. And that brings the question of, like, are you, do you go the Laviolette, Quenneville, Boudreau way, or do you go the new way?
No, I'm going young. I mentioned the younger guys as far as less experienced, but also guys who have played. This is where I don't mind a guy who has played but is a good coach simply because they can deal with the media and the spotlight and everything else. Knobloch, I think, would have a hard time with it. Because, again, it wouldn't take more than just, I don't know, a 10-12 record at the beginning for people to say, see, he's just an AHL coach.
Right.
Honestly, that's all it would really take in this climate, especially with the players that he has.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. What is Panarin going to respond to an AHL coach? I'm not sure. And that may be unfair of me to say. But
no, it's not. It's not unfair. It's a legitimate concern. We have a lot of players on this team that.
And I like Knobloch. I think he's talented, but I just don't think he's ready.
So, but if you're going young, that's the question with all of them. Like, are they ready? Like, that's going to be.
Well, at least the other guys that I had mentioned, Gruden and Jay Leach, they're on NHL squads.
Yeah,
they're dealing with the playoffs now. Both of them had a lot of success Maybe not as much with Gruden this year, but they did regular season. Leach certainly going far in the playoffs here. Those things I think are a lot better than the best AHL coach you have.
And it is, and not just dealing with the media, Russ, but you're right. Like that, ex-players are also more likely to get respect than non. Like so Panarin's more likely to give Leach respect.
Yes,
because he played the game. Like and there's definitely a young thing about that with players. There's no question about it. It's more so that it's always been talked about, but it's more so than ever, I think, honestly.
Yeah, and when you have certain high-priced players, I really do feel like that's an issue in New York that you can't get around. And the funny thing is if the Rangers hire, let's say they hire Jay Leach, right? They'll talk about the fact that he's an ex-player. They'll talk about the fact that, what he did. I think he was more of a Devils player, right? And those things, and they'll get off it. If the Rangers hire Chris Knobloch and they bring him up from Hartford, it will be a massive story. They'll be like, can this guy do it? Is the first Hartford coach is coaching the Rangers. Like, they'll go through a whole bunch of machinations. And I don't know if what I just said is true. There probably has been somebody they brought up during the year because they've had so many coaches. But the point is, it would be a much bigger story than probably even the Rangers would want.
Yes. Now, I heard the name Luke Richardson, which is weird, right?
Yeah, listen, Luke Richardson has a lot of respect out there. And
there's a lot of respect out there,
but he's coaching Chicago.
That's what I'm saying. It is, but is he officially named? Was he still interim coach, or has he?
No, he was hired last year.
He was hired last year, right? I wonder. I mean, I don't
know his contract status.
Well, Chicago's going to release him from his contract, so he could. No.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see, like, do they go a different way now that they have a Bedard?
Because Luke Richardson has a reputation of being a good teaching coach. So
Richardson's an amazing coach, and I honestly think that he's way big time underrated and one of the better.
I don't know if there's a team, like, I kind of get where you're getting at, Ek. I don't think they would release him from his contract. I don't know if there's a coach in the NHL right now that a team would just release him from the contract. I know
generally the only way that happens is if it's some kind of promotion.
I mean, it happened with Gallant, but
I mean, unless it was given like hockey ops head coach or whatever, something it has to be some kind of like promotional thing, like a promotion.
No, there's nothing. I don't think there's any promotion they could give Luke Richardson that would be able to give him to change one team to another. You'd have to trade for him, like they did with Michel Bergeron, and you'd have to get the first round pick.
This was the hilarious thing on New York radio yesterday. They were talking about the fact that, and Russ was aware of this, that in November when the Rangers were slumping, that Chris Drury went out and asked a couple veteran coaches, one being Barry Trotz, and Trotz was not interested. And probably at that point he had an idea that Poile was going to
on the horizon. Yeah.
Right. The other one was Quenneville, and obviously Quenneville was blocked by the situation with the NHL.
Right. Although we don't know that officially.
No, we don't know that officially. That's the assumption.
Right. We don't even know if he's met with Gary Bettman. That's the funny thing. We don't know.
And you can talk to Quenneville without offering him a job. You can just go to him and say, like, I'm just looking for advice. Like if Quenneville's somebody that Drury respects or whatever, as far as situation goes. That's the only thing that people don't. Babcock is not perfect.
You can make a phone call, sure.
But the
Babcock's perfect with the Rangers. He's not perfect.
That was the theory. The theory is that that Drury at that moment wanted to go with somebody who was an experienced coach, somebody who had Stanley Cup credentials, and then the name next mentioned was Babcock. And I think Mike Babcock in New York would be an absolute friggin' disaster.
Yeah, it would.
And I
don't think so.
Oh my God, he would be.
Why do you think so? Why do you think that's the case?
Why? Because I think maybe he has the ego to. Maybe he has the ego to deal with the New York media like he dealt with the Toronto media. I don't doubt that, but I do think that what has happened to him in Toronto is something that he will get grilled on over and over in New York, and I think it'll consume him. Russ?
I'm sorry. I was reading this information about Bob Hartley because
I'm here. I'm sorry, guys.
Bob Hartley was on Calgary radio, and I guess people brought up the fact that, Chris Drury, whatever, but he says he's out of the game too long, and I think he is.
Maybe he always comes up.
Maybe he could be an assistant coach.
Hartley's got good PR. His name always comes up in different situations like this.
But Mike, what was it that you wanted?
I'll answer your Babcock thing, Mike, because I was listening to it.
In New York would be a disaster because
why?
The buildup would be tremendous.
Right.
the amount of people wanting to cover the Rangers would go up tenfold because they'd want to see if he's going to implode or not.
But that's not a problem. I mean,
That's what happened.
the reality is like he could definitely handle the New York media.
No, he's got the ego to do it. But what the point I was making was, in the wake of what happened in Toronto and what he did behind the scenes, I think he would get consumed by the droning of Larry Brooks and other reporters asking him about bullying players, and that's not like one day thing. That's something that'll go on and on.
Yeah, I just don't think he cares. Like he doesn't care about that kind of.
The organization has to. The organization
he would douse it because he just doesn't give a crap. You know, like
the organization has to care.
I don't know. I mean,
if whoever's bringing up Patrick Waugh in New York. Patrick Waugh in New York.
That is a disaster.
That is a disaster waiting to happen.
That I will give you. That I will totally give you 100%. There will be. I think Patrick Waugh as an NHL coach is just really unlikely. Just from talk, there's so it would take a crazy set of circumstances for that to happen, and
it really would.
Perhaps, I mean, the only circumstance I could see happening with that, and I have heard this before a couple times as a rumor, is that there's a group out that's trying to get the Quebec Nordiques in there that he's part of. Like he's actually tied into that group.
Sure. I mean, for that as sort of like a stunt for their first year.
Right. That could be a scenario.
In New York, man, it's just, you're asking for trouble, man. There's no real positive for doing that.
There's no part of Patrick Waugh's personality that meshes with the average New Yorker's personality at all. Let's just say that. Like, it's not like there's no connect. There's no way. It's just not going to work. Just like think of Jan Levine and Patrick Waugh in the same room. Just like think about it. Just they do not make sense. Like it does not. There's no concept. There's no world in which that is not like some kind of strange.
Yeah, Patrick Waugh is not riding the subway.
Some wormholes would open up. It's just we just got to not let this happen.
Right.
But it's just that's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. So let's get into the so what's going to happen tonight with New Jersey and Carolina? Like this is like something I think
flip a coin.
All right, I got one right here.
I like New Jersey at home. I think they've been able to benefit from home ice. It started in the Ranger series. It's happening with, I think, because they're a young team.
Yeah.
I like what they've done with Hughes. I don't know who's starting this game. I really don't.
Yeah.
I would probably go with Schmid again, but I don't know that they're doing that.
Who's starting for either team? It's
insane. Ronta practiced yesterday.
Yeah, he was sick, right? So I would assume Ronta's going for Carolina, but I don't know for New Jersey. I think New Jersey can even it up here. It's still a long series because, again, New Jersey is going to have a hard time winning in Carolina. And if they don't, obviously they're not winning the series. So we'll see if Hughes kind of keeps them rolling. Maybe he did give them a spark.
Carolina's going to have a hard time winning in New Jersey, too. Like that's what it feels like to me. It feels like
– Hughes, not Jack Hughes, for,
No, I think he helps. But, there has never been a Final Eight with more possible goaltending starting combinations.
Other than Bob. Bob is the one solid.
Bob is the only one.
Well, Ottinger.
Of course he is, Russ.
I know. Just the whole thing's crazy. Ottinger's the one guy that it's going to be in there.
Yeah.
But as far as the one solid guy, it's Bob. So this is a crazy year.
It's absurd. Like goaltending is always the thing, right? Like you have to have solid goaltending to win a Stanley Cup. Like it's.
I mean, the guy who I thought was the best goaltender in the Western Conference has lost 2 games to an expansion team, and has played badly in those 2 games. Ottinger.
I still put him back in because he's earned that.
Yeah, no, I still think he's a great goaltender, and I think he'll bounce back like he did after game 1. But still, it's like and it's more on him. It's more on the team in front of him. But he's got to play well too.
They compare Ottinger to Carey Price a lot, right? And I'm watching them play, and I'm like, there is something that really is similar to them, in that they both the way to score on them is to not make pretty plays, but just throw the puck at the net.
That was the book on Dominic Hasek.
Right, and that's the book on a lot of these goalies like that. Like Ottinger is way better. Like Calgary last year when he was playing against Calgary and doing those incredible things. Calgary was moving the puck really well and making nice plays, and he was making great saves. But Seattle is throwing the puck at the net and and getting bounces and getting screens and getting all kinds of deflections. That's how you're gonna beat Ottinger, and that's what they're doing.
I saw Ottinger play like in the NCAA playoffs. I saw Carey Price play in the Calder Cup. I was covering that live actually. I still have a better feeling even from going back thinking about the Calder Cup to now than even Ottinger to now. And Ottinger's really good. I still feel like Price was ahead of him. And and it's hard to give you an exact reason why, but I just feel like they're on a different level. Like I think, Price was a 10 and Ottinger is like a 7.5 right now.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that, Ottinger has those moments where he looks like
he has those moments where you say, wow, look at that. See, but it's not like the continuous.
But the consistency is huge, and consistent. And these playoffs, we've seen the consistency come up a little bit. Like a little bit more than
the whole key to that series. Like if he doesn't come back next game, that could tilt the whole series.
Right, and it's kind of insane. So that's the other game tonight. We have no idea these two games tonight are just completely. Like my instincts tell me that Dallas and Carolina rebound tonight, but I think there's more of a chance that Dallas rebounds.
I gotta look at Heiskanen's playing, Heiskanen, whatever.
I think so. If I was to guess tonight, I would go with when I had to bet. I would say New Jersey and Dallas tonight, but I don't know. What do you think, Mike, tonight?
Heiskanen's back with a face shield, so if he's gonna play, I would go with Dallas and New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expect Dallas to bounce back. New Jersey, the thing is, it's like, I mean, it's so weird because they played so badly in Carolina and were so dominant in Game 3, but it's following the same script as the Rangers series. I thought that they were done after 2 games against New York, and then they came back and showed
Mike, after those 2 games, I thought that was. I would have said, if I had to make predictions, I would have said the Rangers are going to sweep them out of this place. Like it felt like that was the clearest sweep I've ever seen, and they didn't win another game. Yeah,
Hughes gave them the jump that Schmidt gave them against the Rangers. So I don't know. I mean, this game will be the one though, because if New Jersey loses this one at home, they're in deep trouble. If they win this one at home, then they may just have to figure out how to win one game in Carolina, which, we'll wait and see.
Then I think Game 7,
Wednesday. I'm not sure if there's games on Wednesday or not, but I think there might be.
There's a game on Wednesday.
Yeah. Are you sure?
Well, that's Florida-Toronto Wednesday.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Talk about that one for a second?
Somebody's got to let Toronto know.
Mike, I saw your article that was printed like 2 minutes before mine was printed, right before this podcast, that went up on Hockey Buzz. Which are you trying to remember what you wrote about?
No, I know it exactly.
Okay, so you wrote about who starts in goal for Toronto in game 4.
And immediately after I posted the article, practiced in Sunrise, and Ilya Samsonov was not on the ice.
Okay,
it's Joseph Woll and Matt Murray. And based on what they're saying, it sounds like Wall's going to be the starter.
Yeah, it's Woll. Like if Matt Murray were starting, he'd actually be doing a lot of work right now.
But he's practicing, but he's not.
I know, but
I thought Woll was really good. Like,
yeah,
I think every time I've seen Woll play, I've been impressed.
The only thing you do have to play differently with Woll, and Brody on that goal that made Woll look bad, that went through his legs, misplayed the puck behind the net. He let the skater get in front of him. And you have to understand, like, Woll is a really good goalie, but he doesn't have the same side-to-side speed that Samsonov does. And I think Brody, he's not as good as Samsonov.
No, I think post-to-post he's pretty good. I think
he's pretty good, but I don't think he's
not.
This is the issue. And if you wanted to line up the critique of Sheldon Keefe, the fact that they played 7 defensemen, and in a game where it was do or die, you played TJ Brody almost 27 minutes. And you played if Mark Giordano was hurt and you're only playing him 8 minutes, then he shouldn't be in the lineup. Right. And I know you want to keep him in there because he's a veteran, he's a great player. But if he's that debilitated, you played, the 2 worst defensemen on your roster, and Eric Gustafsson and Justin Hall.
You're right, because, and I don't mean to say that, and I don't like to say that you're right, but I will say this is that you're right, because I felt like when I saw that they were going with 7 defensemen, I felt like they are not dictating the game. They're going to sit there and they're going to play Florida's game, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, they're the better team. They should be dictating the game.
And they sat Liljegren, who was really good in the first 2 games against Florida. Now, maybe it was because of the last line change, and they didn't want Liljegren being matched up against guys like Kachuk. I mean, at this point, play your 6 or play your 7 best defensemen, and your 6 or 7 best defensemen do not include Justin Hall, who is responsible for the Duclair goal, and is not Eric Gustafsson, who is, He's as dangerous to his own team as he is to the other team.
I will. So 2 things. First one is Stuart Skinner's in net, so Mike can be happy.
There you go.
I don't think Woodcroft's playing around. So the other thing is, I would play Gustafsson in this game. They need some extra offense or something, and they're going to because listen, this is a big challenge for Wall. He's definitely given up 2 goals, and they have to have the mindset that we're scoring 4 tonight. And
again,
they're going to lose.
Russ, if their core group shows up, which they haven't so far in the series, they have a chance to win. If they've done what they've done in the first 3 games, then it's handshake alley. And I'll be up in Toronto on Friday for locker room closeout.
Yeah, I see what Andrew's saying. Like, give Timmins a shot. I get that. But,
yeah,
but the offense of what maybe Gustafsson could give you on the power play. More than what Timmins will give you.
The same excuse that you use for Timmins is the same excuse you would use for Murray. I mean, Murray hasn't played in a game in 5 weeks. Timmins, I think, he played 2 games at the end of the season, 2 or 3 games at the end of the season.
I did hear that Murray was looking strong. Like I have somebody who's watched the practices down there, and they said that in Florida, and he was watching Murray, and they said Murray looked healthy. Like he looked good.
I know. I know the Leafs are not thinking this way, but I'll say it anyway. I think they're going to go with Wall, but I think one of the reasons that they probably will go with Wall is they don't want Murray to get hurt again. And if Murray gets hurt again in the offseason, they can't buy him out. And they have to buy him out. They have to buy him out. They would clear $4 million in cap space, which would be enough to sign guys. Now they're not thinking that, but
they're not thinking that.
Sheldon Keefe is not thinking that way, but I bet you Kyle Dubas is.
No, I bet you he's not.
Yeah, I bet you he is.
I don't think at this point he's still worried about his job. Like he's like because we get swept here. That makes things all weird.
I don't think Kyle Dubas is worried about his job because I think he's got an extension if he wants it. I know that some people are floating out there that Pittsburgh hasn't hired a general manager because they want to hire Kyle Dubas. Okay,
listen,
Kyle Dubas wants to
interview him. They could interview him.
If Kyle Dubas wants to go to Pittsburgh, he can go to Pittsburgh. I mean, honestly, Toronto is the best job in hockey.
Okay, but
is it?
Unplug from that for just a minute. And let's just say at the end of the season, July 2nd rolls around, Kyle Dubas interviews with Pittsburgh. Like, let's just say he interviews with them. Does that change what the Leafs might do?
I would think, Russ, it would happen way before then. I don't
know. Is he allowed to interview with?
No. They would give him permission.
You think they would?
Okay. No, I think that the contract situation with Dubas will be resolved a week to 10 days after the Leafs are eliminated. Because
what if he wants to talk to Pittsburgh? Do you think they would allow?
That's what I'm saying. They would give him permission.
You do think they would? Okay.
Yes, I think do I think anybody else is safe? No. I think Dubas, let's just say the level of criticism in terms of this team, the lowest right now is Dubas, because Dubas did the job in terms of at the deadline, adding the players that needed to be added to help this team move forward. The problem is that the core that he built it around is not.
Keefe's job hang in the balance of Dubas? Like if Dubas is gone, is he all of a sudden exposed?
Keefe? Well, he's got a year left in the contract.
I get that. Is he all of a sudden exposed where all of a sudden they're going to bring in if Dubas decides I do want to go to Pittsburgh, would they just wipe it clean?
If Dubas is gone, I think they fire Keefe. If Dubas signs an extension, I think Keefe, they play out the final year of his contract like they played out Dubas's final year, and then
he leaves. You think Keefe would be gone too?
Yes,
I wouldn't bring Keefe back either way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is the fact he's got a year left in his contract.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
I know, but I'm saying I don't think they're going to give him an extension. Yeah. I think they're going to say, okay, we went with Kyle at the last year of his deal, and he had to prove himself, and now you have to prove yourself. I mean, he's not going to walk away from the final year of his contract.
I mean, I will say this: if Sidney Crosby texts me and I'm Kyle Dubas, I'll go interview. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, right. That's the thing. I mean, and I mean, listen, I think Dubas is safe too. Like I do agree with you, but I think that it's going to get weird if they get swept. I don't think they're going to get swept. Okay, so I'll put it out there right now that I don't think
they're getting swept.
There you go. Well, I don't want them to get swept. I want them to keep going.
What does Tron say about the Leafs getting swept?
The Buzztron had the Leafs winning this series in 7.
They did.
Yes.
So they only have to win 4 in a row now.
Buzztron was infected by a virus.
But the Buzztron had the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup. So let's remember that. That's
yeah, there you go.
So that's the reality of the Buzztron.
Oh, at some point, it's going to be rest in peace, Buzztron, when the Leafs are.
And it's but see, the Buzztron works counter to the Maple Leafs, because the Maple Leafs are the one team, like I said, that the Buzztron was wrong 62% of the time. The only team in the entire NHL that the Buzztron was wrong on more than 50% of the time was the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Russ.
And that's because the Maple Leafs lose to teams they should beat all the time and beat teams they should lose to all the time.
Do you remember when that scene in Office Space when they're beating up the copier in the middle of the field?
Yeah,
that's the Buzztron.
The Buzztron was killer this year. I mean, let's not rip on the Buzztron. The Leafs just make no sense. You can't predict them.
No, I'm sorry.
They make no sense. They have losing records to teams like the Arizona Coyotes, like the Coyotes.
Yeah. Yes,
it's crazy. The Leafs make no sense at all.
All right,
sure.
I gotta run, guys. I'll see you.
We gotta go, but we'll talk more tomorrow, I imagine, about this. Yeah.
I'm sure we will.
Did the Buzztron run the lottery last night? Nope. The Buzztron right now is being recharged. The rechargeable batteries are sitting over there, and I'm getting it together because it runs off of a TI-35 processor.
It's a Tandy 286.
It is. It's a Tandy. It's a color. It's a Radio Shack Color Computer 2 with a TI-35 processor in it, and that's the key. That's
not a Pentium. Come on.
It does ASCII video, but no, not real video. All right. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Try to enjoy your night tonight. And we'll see where we go. We'll see where we go from here.